Fox Fest. Oh, I didn't know that. He was here earlier. Why? Thank you, Janie. All right, if everybody wouldn't mind, let's do a moment of silence. All right, thank you. Let's, first of all, welcome, and let's call this meeting, joint meeting of the Nye County Board of Commissioners at 11:01. Deborah, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure enough.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. All right. Manager, let's hit number 2, please.
Item number 2, general public comment, up to 3-minute time limit per person. Public comment will be for all matters off the agenda. Action will not be taken on these matters considered during this period until specifically included on an agenda as an action item.
Thank you. Sam or Janie, do we have anybody on the phone?
No, Chair.
I see nobody in Tonopah, nobody here, so we're going to close public comment and move on to number 3, please.
Item number 3, Commissioner Manager comments. This item is limited to announcements, brief discussions of public comments, correction of factual inaccuracies, direction to staff, or topics proposed for future board meetings. Lengthy deliberation of topics not on the agenda is prohibited by the Nevada Open Meeting Law.
Thank you for that. Morning, Commissioner Jabor. Do you have anything up there?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I will try to be brief. Unfortunately, we had an accidental fire here in Tonopah at the apartments just across from the county complex. And 4 families currently are basically homeless due to those fires destroying their dwellings in the apartment facility, and a couple of animals took off for their lives, so frightened, and we did lose a couple of animals as well in the fire. So these folks, I'm going to ask, and I hope that the families are not offended or embarrassed in any way, but this is a time of need of food, clothing, blankets, shoes, monies to help with different things, because everything was lost in this unfortunate incident of the fire. So I don't have any information as far as where to send. If anybody listening, anybody there, anybody here is able to help and assist these families in any way, and there are children involved as well. So I don't, please don't misunderstand. I hate to start off in a negative and sad way, but this is first and foremost for this community and part of Nye County as our neighbors to help and assist in any way that we're able, if we're able. And I thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and obviously our thoughts and prayers are with them as well. Commissioner Bain, do you have anything? Nothing from him. How about Commissioner Koenig?
I have nothing, thank you.
Nothing, Chair.
Nothing. Boy, you guys are good. I have one quick one. I've heard a couple of, I don't do any of the social media stuff, but I've heard a couple of comments that people were potentially offended or bothered by the fact that occasionally I will reach out to Vice Chair or Commissioner Koenig or Commissioner Jabor for, procedural advice on how we're doing these. This is my, I believe, third one, but it certainly is something that we work as a team here, and that's what we all do, staff and us up here. So I appreciate any of the help that I receive and always will. So that's all I have. Thanks for being here, and let's move on to number. Oh, yeah, do we have any directors or managers who would like to comment?
I just had a question for Commissioner Jabor. If he knows if Red Cross has been in contact with those people, because I do know they were notified immediately.
Yes, they were, Manager. They were notified, and they have issued, to my knowledge, some type of debit card for food and drink. So they're not totally stranded and abandoned. So they did step up. Thank you.
Nice. Anybody else? Sam?
No, Chair.
All right, thank you for that. Let's close that out and move to number 4, please.
Item number 4, approval of the agenda for the February 19th, 2025. It is the 13th.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's going to be hard to read next items then.
Manager, I did the same exact thing. I grabbed the wrong agenda.
The only item that we do need to remove is item number 5.
All right. Thank you for that. Let's go to number 6, please.
Item number 6. For possible action, discussion, and deliberation to approve the fiscal year 2023-2024 audits for Nye County and all component units of Nye County conducted by Daniel MacArthur, Ltd., pursuant to NRS 354.624.
All right. Thank you for that. So let's start with the man with the knowledge.
Dan MacArthur, for the record, happy to be here with you today to go through the June 30th, 2000
Please spell your last name.
MCARTHUR.
Thank you.
To begin with, I'd like to just turn to what we call the auditor's opinion page. If you want to turn to that page, if you have a PDF copy, I don't know the PDF number, but page number 1 in a bound copy. And on the independent auditor's report. As auditors, there are requirements that we're supposed to follow as we perform an audit. We follow generally accepted auditing standards, and we follow also government auditing standards that are determined by the federal government. So I initially want to go there, and I just want to read one paragraph to you. It's the second paragraph on the opinion section of this, and it says this. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the county as of June 30th, 2024. So basically that means that's a clean audit opinion on the financial statements. There's another paragraph in here, and I'm going to choose not to read it, but just so everybody understands the level of an audit when a financial statement audit is performed. So auditors are to find audit information, audit evidence to support the fact that the financial statements are fairly stated. We're to find reasonable assurance that they're fairly stated, not absolute assurance. Another way to say that is so everybody understands we don't do a forensics audit. Some people think when we do audits like this, it's a forensics audit. No, this is a financial statement audit. And we believe we have audit evidence. That's why we've issued this clean opinion on the financial statements, that we have reasonable assurance and documentation to support the numbers that are in the financial statement, so that it's clear that this is not a forensics audit, because sometimes I've been asked that question. That's not what this is, okay? From there, I would go to a next section in reporting. At the very back of the report, we're to report on compliance with law and regulation. State statute requires that to take place, and there's certain areas that we have to bring to your attention based on what the statute says. There's two areas of non-compliance to bring to your attention today. One area is...
Go right ahead.
You're going to
Which-
ask the same question.
Can you please?
I'm on page 358.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'll make sure I say
That's
the
all right,
page
and it
number.
also will make it easier for folks following along. All right.
So state statute basically indicates that expenditures can't exceed budgets at the function level in any of the funds. And a function level would be like the general government function, or the public safety function, or, community support, things like that. So this year, inside the financial statement, there are some functions in the general fund that are over budget. One of the functions is over budget primarily because of agreement that was reached and payments to personnel in September of 2024 that had a retroactive impact on the prior year. Because those were agreements that were made with bargaining units, and it was a settlement that took place, and payment went out in September of 24. Expenditures related to that were posted back into June of 2024 that caused a budget violation in the general fund. Guidance from the Department of Taxation, they issued a letter in 2019 that indicated that if there is a budget violation due to an arbitration agreement or some type of bargaining unit agreement, then that is not a violation of the law. So it explains that in this section. So it says, yes, it's over budgeted, but it explains why it's over budget, and technically it's not a violation of the law. There is an over budget expenditure in the public works function also. That was impacted from the settlement, but there were additional expenditures that would have still caused this function to be overspent. In the Agricultural Extension Fund, there is an over expenditure of $4,332. That was caused by accounts payable that came in after the end of the year, were paid after June 30th. They weren't anticipated to be as high as they were, and that's what caused the budget violation in the Agricultural Extension Fund. Print Museum Fund, very similar. There is a budget violation of $1,321. It again is directly related to accounts payable, and if you were to go into the financial statement, you'll see that accounts payable matches that number exactly. And that caused the budget violation there. There is a very small violation in the state and county room tax fund of $82. It's noted in the report, but is really quite immaterial. And then there is the Prump Golf Course Enterprise Fund. It exceeded its budget by $135,188, and that's due to higher than anticipated service and supply costs. It wasn't due to accounts payable or anything like that. It's just significant costs that came out of the fund. There is also another comment in the report. I don't necessarily need to turn the page. I can explain that. There is a requirement for the county on at least every 2 years to do a physical inventory of the county's capital assets. The commissioners designate a capital asset manager, and then it becomes that manager's responsibility to, within a 2-year period, physically make sure there is a inventory taken of all those assets. That hasn't been taken over the last 2 years. Prior to that, it hadn't been taken for a year or two. There was an attempt to try to get it completed, but it has not been completed. And so that becomes an NRS violation as well. With these comments in the report, the county then is supposed to put a corrective action letter together and indicate how these are going to be corrected. Another item inside the report, and it was also a finding last year, and let me take you to that page. Let me take you to page 356. This is not an NRS finding. It is what's called an internal control finding. In the prior year, there was difficulty in getting the books closed out timely, meaning for the 6/30/23 year. Significant change in staff at that point in time. In the 6/30/24 year, some of that carried over into that year, in the 6/30/24 year. And so we have a comment in here about period end close related to making sure the books get timely closed at the end of each month, making sure all accounts are reconciled at the end of each month so that the financial information that the board may see or review will be as timely as possible. Obviously, that wasn't done timely during the year due to staff turnover and several positions unfilled. If you look at page 356, you'll see under views of responsible officials, just indicates this: county management agrees with the findings and recommendations. Subsequent to year end, all vacant positions within the comptroller's office have been filled. So actions taken to fill the positions. I would anticipate as you move into the 2024-25 year, I don't anticipate, with what I'm seeing, this type of problem carrying forward and having things be a month or two late in the 2025 year. Even though, as I say, that there's just constant work that needs to be done to get things up to date and continue to work on that. Getting all positions filled is a real positive. Inside the financial statement, I'm to report to you that there are estimates inside the financial statement. And there's two very significant estimates. One of them relates to OPEB, retiree insurance. Every year there's an actuarial report that is prepared by an outside consultant estimating what they think that liability might be. I would just like to turn to that page in the audit report with you and point that out to you so you can see clearly what I'm talking about. And point that liability out to you. If you could turn to page 57, I'm sorry, 57. Got to keep my glasses on here. On page 57, there's a table here that shows basically items that relate to long-term debt. And there's a section called governmental activities and there's a business type activities. And in these tables, the last two items in the governmental activities show two different estimates. One is the net OPEB obligation. And you can see that estimate is $58 million at the end of 2024. Just to note how volatile it is, at the end of 23, it was $49 million. I've seen these fluctuate significantly over the years with the different clients that we do perform audits on. It is an estimate required to be put in the financial. And then there is another estimate in here called net pension obligation. Just as a reminder, this estimate in here, it shows under the governmental section, it shows an estimate of $79,566,000. State statute indicates that if the county pays their monthly PERS payments to the state, they have no legal liability. They've covered their requirement. Governmental accounting standards require this to, however, be inside your financial statement. They've determined that in order for fair presentation, they think this liability needs to be presented someplace. This is the county's proportionate share of the unfunded liability that exists with the state PERS system. So the liability shows here, it's an estimate. From my perspective, I don't ever see you having a legal obligation to pay it, but it still has to be inside the report. I would like to then go to page 93 and 94. just talk just a minute about the general fund of the county, where the majority of activity takes place, and just, this shows summaries of where the county is as of June 30th of 24. On page 93, just point out a couple of things that I'm sure you're all aware of, but so you can see them here on how they lay out on the financial statement. Just two things I'd like to point out on page 93 is the cash balances as of June 30, 2024. The cash balance is $9,652,000. In 23, it was $2,546,000. Halfway down the page, you see the liability section where it says accounts payable, accrued payroll, and due to other funds. The cash is higher due to the liability where there was some money borrowed from the grants fund of $5,780,000. I know each of you are aware of that, but point out to you how it lays out here in the financial statement. On page 94, it shows a summary of revenues and expenditures by different categories, taxes versus licenses and permits. And just a couple of items to point out. You look at taxes, you can see taxes actually came in higher than higher than the prior year, $17,390,000 in 23 and $18,300,000 in 24. Overall revenues were higher this year than last year. Part of that is due to sale of property by the county treasurer. Excess proceeds money comes into the fund, and depending on how much the excess is when sales take place, it can have an impact, which shows up in the miscellaneous category under revenues. If you look on 94 under the expenditures, you can just see where it does show the caption under general government, where you can see the over expenditure line item there showing $365,000 overspent, and the public works line item of $95,000. But again, a reminder that the bulk of that related to a settlement through arbitration with bargaining units. I do want to point out under debt service where it has negative numbers in the variance column, $31,211 negative and $1,582 negative. Those items are not deemed to be a budget violation per statute. Debt is a separate issue inside the budget, and so there is really no issue with a budget violation in a financial statement when it relates to paying debt. Just a couple other things I would like to bring to your attention, and part of a communication process required by the AICPA. I'm to inform you I've done this of any estimates in the financial statement. I've taken in and shown you those. If there was a need because of difficulty of some kind, we had to consult with another CPA or another accounting professional. I'm to bring that to your attention. There was nothing like that came up as part of the audit, so there was no outside consultation. If there are any new accounting principles or standards that came into effect this year, I'm to bring that to your attention. And there were no new accounting standards that are presented in this report. If we had difficulties that we encountered during the audit, I'm supposed to bring that to your attention. Frankly, the only difficulty was just being able to get everything done so we could get here. We weren't able to meet the normal date of December 31st just because of the issues we've already talked about a lack of staff during the year in the comptroller's office, but the efforts have been made to fill those positions. When we do an audit, if there's any errors that we find, we go to the comptroller and deal with those errors and say we suggest and recommend these changes to the financial statement. Comptroller can agree or disagree with those. So any proposals we made, the comptroller agreed with those. So there are no unrecorded misstatements that we're aware of in the financial statement that have been passed as a past entry. If we had any disagreements with management, I'm supposed to bring that to your attention. There were no disagreements with management. Also, as part of an audit, I'm to inform you that we require letters from management that indicate that they have worked with us in getting the audit done, presented to us any documentation we required. It represents to us their responsibility for the financial statements. We did get that letter, and that's routine, but I'm to inform you that we do have that. There is also another letter required by the Nevada revised statutes where we're to obtain documentation from management concerning the proper use of all the funds that you see inside the financial statement. They're supposed to give us that type of, I don't want to use I'll just say representation. It's not a certification. And so we do have that documentation as well. Other than no specific items, I could go in depth in financial numbers, but that's not my intent today. This is a pretty big book, and those are the items I needed to cover. Clean audit opinion, a few compliance items that need to be dealt with, an internal control item that's been worked on and is moving forward positively. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody on the board may have. I'd leave my presentation at that point.
Thank you. Thank you for that, sir. Should we hear from the public first? Let's do that. All right.
Hey, you guys, I get to time him
that's
for,
cool.
this is the, yeah.
Good morning,
In Pahrump.
Frank Carboni. It's going to be short. It's going to be short. Frank Carboni, CERB1E. The reason why I'm here is my name is on this report because at the time I was commissioner during that period of time. I'd like to thank the folks that have actually been involved in this because they worked very, very hard from the comptroller's office. I know it was very difficult. I know that Commissioner Strickland was in a lot of those meetings. A lot of those meetings got pretty loud sometimes and got a little bit emotional. But I think that things happened, and I think the report looks good. I appreciate the comments that that Mr. MacArthur made. I think that in some cases there's probably one or two in there I think could have been a little bit more serious. But I think that it was very fair. Report's good. It looks like we are doing pretty well as far as the funds coming in. Obviously, we know that the net proceeds are still a little lacking, but again, hopefully that might change in the future. So again, thank you for the report. Thank you, commissioners. Take care.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Sam, do we have anyone on the phone?
No, Chair.
Nobody else? Anybody in Tonopah? No? All right. I guess we're closing public comment then. Commissioners, questions for Mr. MacArthur?
The only thing I'd like to state, if I might, Chair, is that it may not be, the public may not be aware that this has been an ongoing project all year long. And this was a brief overview that was given about what's going to be reported to the Department of Taxation. But each one of these commissioners were briefed in depth with Dan MacArthur, Helen By, and we have an absolute understanding what we've got in front of us is good work. It's accurate work, and it took a lot of time to get it done. And I appreciate so very much our finance department for making this happen because it was very questionable with what we started with and how the team had to spend so very much time getting this done. So good work. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, indeed. Commissioners? Commissioner Jabor?
Thank you, Chair. My question, plural, one at a time, is for Mr. Dan MacArthur. Dan, thank you for the presentation. Very professional and thorough. Appreciate you and your team. Since I've been commissioner, and you mentioned it, you scratched the surface today with cooperation from management and the finance controller and controller's office. However, over the years, you've given us recommendations. And my question to you, sir, is have those recommendations all been followed up on, prioritized? Are there any that are still left out there that need to be addressed, that may have fallen by the wayside because of, specifically, there's change in commission, change in county management, change in the comptroller's office, et cetera. And I know that you are the constant denominator coming before us and giving us your report. So that's my first question, sir.
So to respond to that, the two areas that I have concern about it, I actually have put in the report. The issue with the capital assets, that has carried on for multiple years, and I think emphasis should be placed on that. I know there's a lot on the plate in the comptroller's office right this minute. The statute indicates the commissioners designate who that individual is or who's responsible for that. We have discussed that in several of our meetings when we've had planning concerning this on how to deal with the capital asset listing. But I think that's one that still needs, that probably needs the most work and the most time put towards that inside this report. Then the issue with the month-end close, I still think that needs some constant work as well. And the reason it's in the report is because we still see the issue existing, even though there's been some corrective action. There still needs to be some continued work to get it to the point where information is as current as possible each month, so that everyone managing their departments as well as the commissioners have some very current numbers at all times to be able to make decisions concerning operation of the county. It also helps with the budget process as well. So to answer your question, Commissioners, your board, those are the two that are most consequential to me that I did put in the report.
Okay, I thank you for that,
I guess
for that answer.
let me just add one more that relates to the budgets and budget violations, okay? Having things timely inside the comptroller's office will help so that there aren't any future budget violations. It helps so you can see some of those numbers quicker and make decisions. One of the issues with the Nevada revised statutes is that it doesn't allow you after the end of the year, with the exception of what's called an enterprise fund, which would be like the Pahrump Golf Course. You can't fix those budget violations. They have to be fixed inside of basically a meeting with the county commission by June 30th of each year. And so being able to stay up on the accounts payable, looking at what remaining purchase orders might be open, that's a difficult thing to do. And so the more that month-end close is done, the more likely it'll be that there won't be budget violations, even though we do see them in many places where everything is current too. Sometimes it's just hard to know if expenditure shows up you just didn't anticipate. But that would help control the budget violations more.
Thank you, sir. So, Chair,
Yes,
would it be appropriate? Thank you. Would it be appropriate at this time to request staff to put on the agenda, future agenda, the capital asset inventory issue, as well as the golf course issue?
Yes, absolutely.
Chair, will you allow comptroller to answer that, please?
Yes.
I just wanted to add that we'll be going over, the next agenda item is to go over how we will plan to address those deficiencies and weaknesses pointed out in the audit report. So we can go into more detail with that.
And may I, Helen, Chair? And that's based on a correction letter that will follow this. It goes to Department of Taxation. So we can get really in depth at that point on that. And we do have some ideas, right, Helen? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. MacArthur.
You betcha. Mr. Bain, do you have anything? No?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just say that I have a very critical eye, as many people know, and I met with both the finance and the auditor, and I found them very straightforward. I have looked at these. We've all, as Commissioner Strickland said, met with everyone out there about these documents. Obviously, it's a giant book, and no one knows all this stuff up here, but everything that I've found has made sense, and there's a lot of rules that, whether they're fair or not, things that we aren't in control of. So if anyone is looking at this and trying to understand it, it may take more understanding of law to understand it fully. So I just wanted to say that I'm just in favor of the whole process. It's been good. I haven't seen anything that's bad or confusing. Everything's been pretty straightforward from my perspective. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner Koenig?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Dan one more time, again. Excellent job. As an ex-inventory control guy, I'll be working with the comptroller to fix this problem we have with the physical inventory. And I've done thousands of them, and counting nuts and bolts and pieces that go into machines and stuff is not much different than counting fire trucks. So we'll get it fixed. We don't want to see this on the next audit. That's one of my goals now that you've pointed it out. So thank you again. You always do a great job. And I took the book home and I read the whole thing wrong.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to thank you also. It's a very, very in-depth report, and our pre-meetings, our 221 meetings that we had with you were super helpful. So I really appreciate that. And with that, if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Or is I?
Boscovich, aye. That carries 5-0. Manager number 7, please.
Item number 7 for possible action, discussion and deliberation regarding the corrective action letter for the annual audit report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, to be submitted to the Nevada Department of Taxation pursuant to NRS 354.6245.
Thank you for that. All right. Let's start off with Comptroller Bay.
So the corrective action plan typically is due 60 days after the audit report, but DTAX has requested us be more proactive and submit it early, so we were happy to oblige. We had been, as Commissioner Strickland has mentioned, we have been meeting for a year every week. Every Thursday at 2 p.m., we met with our auditor, and there were a lot of great recommendations. I appreciate everything that is caught during the audit. I started off my career as an auditor for Inspector General for Department of Defense, so I appreciate the function and the spirit of an audit and finding as many control deficiencies, violations of the law, and pointing it out and improving the process over time. So the repeat finding, the first finding is over financial control, internal controls, and it's a repeat from last year. And the main reason for this control deficiency is because we've had workforce shortages and turnover, and a lot of the legacy processes and institutional knowledge have been lost in the turnover and the attrition that has taken place. We have made great strides in actually documenting and bringing back these processes and controls over our financial reporting, especially in the area of accounts payable and recording transactions accurately, timely, and completely by month close. And we have, as mentioned before, we have hired in 3 new managers so that we can have greater accountability and visibility and oversight over the month-end closing. Finance office actually oversees not just accounts payable, but grants and purchasing and contracts. So there's a lot of overlapping, and there's a lot of activity, financial activities that take place within Comptroller, but also out to the departments. And so there's a lot of communication that needs to happen and that could be shored up to improve this process of closing accurately at month end. For capital asset inventory, We actually designated, a couple months ago, we went in front of the board and designated 3 staff members to oversee the capital asset inventory. Capital asset inventory also includes inventorying of property that is sensitive, such as laptops and cell phones. Those are items of value that also should be inventoried and tracked on a yearly basis, ideally. I know that the state requires every 2 years, but the volume of this items of value and fixed assets, it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of hands on deck to oversee and implement. And so we will be rolling out a program where when it comes to physical inventory, we will be calling on all departments to participate in that, in validating and verifying that these assets are still in place and functioning. There has been a lot of cleaning up of our asset inventory, both high and low dollar, and that has taken up a lot of my staff's time to actually get to a clean ledger to even audit. So this year, fiscal year '24, ever since this has come to light, has been spent really cleaning up the subledger for our fixed assets. So now we are ready to go out and do the physical inventory. As far as expenditures in excess of appropriations, these budgetary violations do happen for the lack or deficiency in forecasting. And so, as Mr. MacArthur mentioned, financial close timely actually is critical to this process of monitoring spend and spend rates and identifying quickly in time to make budgetary adjustments to fill these deficiencies. And as far as the Pahrump Golf Course Enterprise Fund, this will require more than just monitoring. This will require a talk and deliberation by the board about having adequate funding for the golf course. Because as it suggests, we're spending more than what we're actually bringing in for this enterprise fund. And normally, we would be lucky to break even. But in order for that to happen, we do need to look at our revenues and project better and make sure that this operation is funded correctly. And we would look into any cost-saving measures as well in conjunction with looking at the revenues. So if you had any questions about those areas, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you for that, Comptroller. Let's hear from the public. Let's start there. Sam, do we have anybody on the phone?
Yes, Chair. The caller is unmuted. Please speak and spell your name for the record.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Caroline Logue, L-O-G-U-E. I had a comment that I don't think is applicable at this time because it pertains to an audit for the library board financial statements.
Yeah.
And so I'm just asking if the auditor could stay for general public comments if that's more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Logue. Sam, do we have anyone else?
No, Chair.
Nobody in Tonopah, nobody here. We're going to close public comment then. Board?
DA, is it appropriate to talk about the library inefficiency when
Maybe
we've
you
already
can,
closed out the item for
To
that
address
audit?
Ms. Logue's comment.
Yeah, I think unfortunately you've already closed the item.
I
and-
believe so too.
Yeah, so it should not be appropriate.
Thank you, sir.
for that, thank you. Board,
As far as no questions for this is awesome.
all right, if there's,
I'm ready, Chair.
let's do it.
Well, not for a motion. I have a couple of questions
Yes,
for the
go ahead.
comptroller. Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for bringing our attention to move on to the next. However, in the corrective action letter, it does scratch the surface, but not in detail as far as my question. I know that we scratched the surface in regards specifically to the capital asset inventory listing. I know that there's a current number that has been established. I know that the number may change. I'm not even comfortable with the current number as it is. And if I can hone in, you did mention laptops and cell phones, for example. Well, with the cost of laptops and cell phones, with the current ceiling that we have established at $3,000, some of these laptops, most of these laptops and cell phones won't even make the list. So again, if we're considering, and I'd like to know when will we make that decision, has that decision already been made, that the ceiling will be elevated to a different amount, different than the 3,000? If you can answer that, because I have a proposal to be considered, and if it's not this meeting, it'll be at another meeting.
So we're talking about two categories of what we call assets. And so what's on the books that are being depreciated, we do have a threshold of $3,000 per item to put it on our books and actually depreciate it over time. When we say items of value, typically cell phones, laptops, they will never be even $3,000 each, but we still have statutorily through the NRS, there is a requirement that we must inventory those items, even of value, even below that 3,000 threshold, every 2 years. So we're tackling capital assets, those big items that are depreciated and that do get audited specifically, and then those items of value just for compliance reasons. So even if we were to raise our threshold to say $5,000, that would relieve our fixed asset category of tracking, but it would not relieve those items of value category, such as items that can actually walk out the door is how I understand it, is if you can lift it up and actually walk out the door and go home with it, such as cell phones, laptops, those items that actually, those Wi-Fi items, those mobile items tend to be sensitive, and those should be tracked. So we're tackling those two areas. We will be coming in front of the board to raise our capital threshold from 3,000, which is the default. If the state says that if we do not establish for ourselves a threshold, then the default is 3,000. That's why it's 3,000 right now. But other counties, and it's with the cost of capital items rising, and ordinary items rising, 3,000 is, in our opinion, from financial perspective, a little bit too low. So we will be coming back in front of the board to ask to raise that threshold to at least 5,000 for per item cost of tangible items. And then there is another threshold that we can set for capital improvements, which also gets depreciated and captured onto our assets and on the books. And that we would like to be raised to 50,000, but we can always talk about this and put this on the agenda as a separate item, and we will be updating our financial management policy based on the decisions that the board approves.
Okay, thank you for that, Helen. I appreciate that. So it will be coming before the board soon, and I look forward to that. My next question to you is the golf course. The golf course, I'm hoping, will also come before us in the future. This has been one of our biggest offenders financially. And I spoke publicly as commissioner from the dais, explaining that we summoned this group, this management group, and we are obligated to at least give them an opportunity and a chance to prove themselves, as they had stated they were successful through the nation running 40 plus golf courses in the black, only 3 in the red, and unfortunately Pahrumps golf course is one of those 3. So I'm not satisfied with their performance, and instead of being big brother and continually putting in money, taxpayers' dollars to the golf course, I think there should be other options that we should consider and visit at this time.
So this will be another item also coming up, and we do want to have this decision or deliberation earlier, hopefully before the April 8th meeting. We do have a budget workshop planned for April 8th. And so the majority of our budgetary funding changes and requests will come forth, but we could actually bring it earlier if we can make that time. And we have a lot of good recommendations coming in from our auditor, from commissioners, and the public, and that will be the time to actually discuss all of that. And we will come up with at least a proposed financial plan and some options that the board should consider to address the deficit situation for the golf course.
Helen, thank you very much, and I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to say regarding the golf course, I sit in on a lot of their advisory meetings they have over there at the golf course. And I learned through this audit that what they believe their costs are and what we believe their costs are $100,000 different. So something they're missing that we have learned. So we definitely need to revisit that, because we don't need a $100,000 loss every year there. Anyway, anybody else have anything? No?
Once again, thank you, Dan, for pointing that stuff out, especially the asset counting and stuff like that. And Helen, if you don't mind, we can get together and discuss it. I have a background in that, but if you want to do it yourself, you can, believe me. So that's it.
She already ordered her jumpsuit so she can crawl around in the dirt.
All she needs is a mirror, a stick.
Just you need a couple different people on.
You
You need a dirt guy to get underneath to find out where the tags are.
Yep, find the VINs.
That'll probably be an interesting report when it's done. Okay, anybody else?
Just make a motion to approve the letter.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Or as I,
Oskovich, aye. That motion carries 5-0. Let's go to number 8, please. Item 8, general public comment, up to 3-minute time limit per person. Public comment will be for all matters off the agenda. Action will not be taken on the matters considered during this period until specifically included on an agenda as an action item.
Thank you. Sam, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. The caller is unmuted. Please speak and spell your name for the record.
Yes, thank you. Caroline Logue, Logue. And my question is directed towards Mr. MacArthur. If you would please inform the liaisons to the Library Board of Directors as to what the time and date that could be established or is established for the library audit report. As the library board directors have not had regular board meetings, we're not able as the public to sit in on any questions or any reports. So hopefully there is that meeting time where they will have an audit report and the public is able to attend. Thank you. If you would just let us know that, it would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Logue. Anybody else, Sam?
No, Chair.
All right, seeing none, no comment in Tonopah or here, we're going to close public comment and go to number 9.
Item 9, Commissioner Manager comments. This item is limited to announcements, brief discussions of public comments, correction of factual inaccuracies, direction to staff, or topics proposed for future board meetings. Lengthy deliberation of topics not on the agenda is prohibited by the Nevada open meeting law.
I see Miss Stephanie. Let's start with her.
Stephanie Elliott, ELLIOTT, the Contracts and Grants Manager. Just a super huge shout out and a thank you. This was definitely a team effort. We have 2 great leaders in our finance department that have been completely focused on this audit and getting everything where it needs to be so that it can be presented to you without major findings, in addition to their regular jobs and everything else that needs to get done. Super huge thank you to our liaison that's been a consistent leader on our calls and helping drive that momentum. We wouldn't be here today if it weren't for Mr. MacArthur and his team, and they've come out to visit us in person. They've shared with us their thoughts. They've given us best practices, and our county leadership, both Lorena and Brett, have been instrumental in helping us get here. So just wanted to recognize everybody for the hard work that went into this. So thank you all.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. Anybody else? Any other managers on the phone? Oh, Comptroller.
And I'm sending my love back to my team, to Stephanie and Grant's team, Stephanie Urga and Blanca Segura. And I have one of my new managers, Miss Melissa Nixon. She's our Diana replacement since Diana has been promoted to my assistant. And so if you have any questions about invoicing and bills and payables and all things accounting, please reach out to Melissa out there. And yeah, I have a fantastic team. We may be young and, not in the team since maybe like 3 years or less, but we are learning a lot and very motivated to improve and be more efficient. And yeah, it's really exciting. We're going into our budget year, and it's going to be quite busy, but I'm really glad for this day, and I'm really happy. We have a great working relationship with Mr. Dan MacArthur, and personally, we have learned so much, and I think because we're sort of a early and young team, that there's a lot of things that we're motivated and we're ambitious to achieve as far as internal controls and just ramping up our efforts here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Comptroller, and you do have a great team. Any other managers on the phone or directors, Sam? Then we will switch to commissioners.
No, Chair.
Thank you for that. How about Commissioner Jabor?
Thank you and good afternoon.
Commissioner Bain?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know where I will defer to the DA if he'd like to let me know, but I had an observation on something here that I did want to share at some point in some way as far as the findings. I don't think it was appropriate to discuss in the audit, but it is sort of a future issue. So I don't know if that's something I could bring up right now briefly, or if it should be at a different time. And if so, and I could issue a private statement, which I'm happy to do, but maybe at a future meeting, if that's more appropriate.
Yeah, DA was shaking his head for right now, so it will be a future item.
How do you know it wasn't saying no problem? There's my first joke. A month and a half.
There you go.
So that would be that would be a request on a future agenda item for the observation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Koenig?
I really don't have much. Again, thank you, Dan, and we'll see you next year.
Thank
It's always a pleasure.
I'll be seeing you a lot sooner than next year. We'll be back at it, right, team? I learned a lot, too. A lot. Thank you, team.
You guys put in a lot of work. That's it. I have nothing else. We're going to adjourn this at 12:01 or 12, whichever one you look at.